Welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. My name is Kevin Thompson, and the name of this video is Marriage, Communication, and the Implicit. In this video, we're going to talk about a difficulty that exists in marriage relationships with regard to what is implicit and what is explicit. As we go through the video, you're going to kind of get the point that it might be better if we could build our relationships from scratch without using the word marriage. Now, I'm not against the institution of marriage, but the word seems like it gets more and more things packed into it, which just makes a lot of things unknown and implicit that later come back to bite us in the end. One thing that we can do is try to become intentional and aware about that and make things more explicit as we go, which is what this is about. So if something is implicit for the sake of this video, it means that we presume something to be the case, but we've never stated that presumption out loud and may not even be aware of our own presumption. You can imagine how frustrating this might be for a married couple, both of whom have many very different unstated presumptions with regard to the same concepts or labels. Men are often notoriously frustrated when they are expected to be mind readers. Likewise, literature, movies, and often real life features women who say to men, "If you really loved me, I wouldn't have to tell you." In this type of situation, the woman thinks that if the man's limerence for her was the same as hers is for him, that it would magically convey unstated logical semantic information that she hasn't taken the time or effort to be able to articulate. We'll talk about limerence later. The happiness of many relationships is sacrificed on the altar of this disconnect between the implicit and the explicit. For this video, we're going to use a visual diagram called the axis of awareness, is what we're going to call it. On the left, we have the implicit. On the right, we have the explicit. One of the goals of having a meaningful, functional, and satisfying relationship is to gradually move as many things as possible over from the implicit to the explicit. Life is full of all sorts of dynamisms, so this should not be thought of as like a waterfall project that can be completed and never addressed again. Rather, it's more of an agile project that is constantly undergoing minute iterations throughout the lifetime of the relationship. We'll talk about the ego self and the authentic self later in the video, or maybe in another video. Not sure yet. We don't want these to be too long. There are 3 phases to every relationship: attraction, negotiation, and maintenance. Once any of these 3 phases has started, it never ends. The negotiation phase is often most explicit during the discussions of defining the relationship. This is when a couple decides to be exclusive, or to be a couple, or engaged, or married. However, those labels implicate tons of unspecified emotional baggage, which are very different from person to person. A strong relationship will involve ongoing negotiations which continually pull things from the implicit into the explicit. This will have several pros and cons, but the good far outweighs the bad. In fact, the only things lost in such negotiations are imaginations of things that were not really real to begin with. When relationships begin, there's always a fair deal of what is called romantic projection. That is, if the attraction is strong enough, each partner can really only see what they hope to see in the other person. When both parties are disabused of these projections, that is when the real relationship starts, or in some cases, never makes it off the launch pad. That might be when they break up. Romantic projection typically lasts anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Because of this, it's actually better for both parties to restrain from emotional attachment to each other to the degree that they can, and actually have a planned letdown of their partner's romantic projections about them. If the real you isn't what they want, it's better that they find out before you lose years of your life investing in them. It can also be a good idea to avoid going on special dates. Rather, simply invite your date to accompany you for things that you do in your normal life. Crossing the romantic projection hurdle and getting to the real meat and potatoes of the relationship tends to be easier for those who are dating with a couple of adult decades under their belt, usually in their late 30s, 40s, and so on. It shouldn't be done too abruptly, that is, getting past that romantic projection hurdle. or without tact, but those anticipating the negotiating phase of the relationship can lean in this direction with grace. The longer the magic of the romantic projection stays alive, the harder both parties will crash when reality comes barreling through the dinner table. The mature person will have their eye on getting things from the dark, magical implicit into the shining light of the explicit with pointed intentionality. However, just as in any point in life, this must come at a pacing. There is no single conversation in which everything will go from the implicit to the explicit. In fact, if you stay together long enough, this will continue to happen until death do us part. So being intentional and aware, but gradual, is the name of the game. We don't even know everything about ourselves. So in a relationship, we need to cross the hurdle of romantic projection and slowly but deliberately start shoveling our new shared reality from the implicit over into the explicit. Just a little each day will do. No need to overwhelm anyone. In the Army, when planning a mission, we would have two categories of unknown things. They were the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. An example of a known unknown is if we anticipate the enemy to know we are coming and have a presence established, say on the other side of the mountain, but we don't know the size of the force or the amount of equipment that they have. It helps to know what you don't know. An unknown unknown could be anything. It could be a sinkhole that takes out 3 vehicles and 8 personnel, or a rhinoceros that gives away our position, or an alliance with another force who outflanks us while maneuvering. There's literally no limit to what the unknown unknowns might be. The term unknown unknowns was made popular by Donald Rumsfeld during the Iraq War, but it existed long before that. In relationships, both kinds of unknowns must be anticipated and met with joy and enthusiasm rather than anger and disappointment. Like we said in a previous video, we must see every mind as being as vast and unknown as the night sky. The cosmos of every mind is a vast unexplored territory, and we must approach it with curiosity and wonder, not with disappointment that it doesn't conform to our expectations. At the same time, when either person feels themselves becoming defensive or angry or hurt, it's time to examine which egoic identity attachment just suffered a blow. We'll do an entire separate video on that. If unhealed trauma is in play, that will need to be healed as a priority. We will also cover that in a separate video. When I was in the Army, no matter what our plans were, we had a saying which is, the enemy gets a vote. That includes everything you cannot anticipate and for which you are not prepared. All those things get a vote in the outcome of your relationship. This means that the unknown unknowns get a huge say in the outcome of your relationship. This should cause some of you who are low in trait openness to go back and reconsider my video on why you should get a prenup. Marriage is already a prenup with the terms set by the state legislature and judges you've never met who are in place because they won a popularity contest, and those terms are completely saturated in misandry. A game is anything that has rules and objectives. Most young people enter into the game of marriage with limerence, blinding them to the rule set of that game, and with no predictability on how those rules may arbitrarily change without notice and how those rules will affect them. Now, who wants to play a game where the rules are not clear from the start? Thus, unknown unknowns are a huge threat. They get a vote, whether you want them to or not. And if you care about your marriage at all, you will be diligent with discovery and amelioration of both the known and unknown unknowns. In any relationship, there is an axis of awareness with regard to what is implicit and what is explicit. That which is implicit is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the more things that remain implicit and unspecified in the relationship, the more it can feel like romance and magic and enchantment and chemistry and being charmed. On the other hand, the more that remains unspecified, the larger the dragon that may be leering beneath the waters waiting to devour you. Mature individuals involved in a relationship will recognize the need to bring as many aspects of the relationship into awareness as possible. The downside to this is that the relationship can seem to lose its magic and enchantment for some people when this happens. An artist once said when looking at another's painting, "I wish I didn't know how to paint." You'll understand what that means in a minute. Years ago, I heard a very captivating song by Dream Theater called "The Spirit Carries On." During the guitar solo, I would go into this blissful trance as I was charmed by the magical soaring melody of the lead guitar. So I decided I would learn that guitar solo, and I did. And doing so brought the entire guitar solo into my explicit awareness. Now I know every note and every fret, but this came at some cost of the enchantment that I used to experience. There are some brief times where I wish I didn't know how to play this guitar solo so that I could go back and enjoy the enchanting magic that I used to experience. However, after some time, the magic came back, but in a new and better way and in a more embodied way, in a way that now cannot be taken away. Going from the implicit to the explicit is sort of like doing a budget. I remember when I was younger, I procrastinated doing a budget, and I remember why. It's like I felt that all my junk food and entertainment funds were coming from some magical place, and that if I shed light on where that money was coming from and where it was going, then that magical place would disappear, and so would my access to Doritos and Mountain Dew and the movie theater. But the budget actually had the opposite effect. It was like getting a raise, and there was much less scarcity and more of getting what we wanted with less worry. Have you ever played the game Minesweeper on a Windows computer? In Minesweeper, there are a certain number of bombs that are all hidden under gray squares. The object of the game is to uncover all the gray squares that do not have bombs underneath them. The only clue you have as you start selecting squares is if you don't set off a bomb, you will be shown numbers. Each number shows how many bombs is touching that square, and those are clues to what other squares you might be able to turn over without setting off a bomb. In a relationship, whatever is implicit and unknown is just like the game of Minesweeper. Everything is going fine 1 minute, then you turn over a bomb and everything explodes. Thus, it is very important to discover and move whatever is implicit and unknown into the explicit and known. Let's look at the visual diagram of our axis of awareness from implicit to explicit. If we were looking into buying a used car or an old house, we would want a home inspection and a mechanic to look it over. We would want to know everything we could possibly know about the item before we engaged in the transaction. When it comes to people, the feeling of limerence makes all such details blissfully blurry. Limerence is the state of obsessive attraction to another person, also known as the limerent object. It would be the person you love or have the limerence for. The LO, limerent object. It's also characterized by an intense longing for the limerent object, and intrusive thoughts about the limerent object, a desire for the limerent object to reciprocate feelings, an irrational positive evaluation of the limerent object's attributes, a focus on whether the limerent object reciprocates feelings rather than falling in love with them. In the movie Bambi, they use the word twitterpated, and that's the same thing as limerence. Let's populate the left side of this diagram with just a few things to keep it simple, but remember, when you meet someone new, nearly 100% of the things you will need to know about them to have a satisfying relationship are implicit and unknown. Remember, their ideas about all these things are already well seated into their mind and their self-perception. How does this look with just one of the major words that are used for a serious relationship, such as marriage? So let's just take a look at this one word, marriage. By the time a person reaches adulthood, their mind is like a hoarder's house full of all sorts of ideas from other people about what constitutes a marriage and a family. Anything from religion to school to studying abroad to movies and home experiences and everything in between can shape a person's concepts and expectations when it comes to marriage and family. One person might have a Little House on the Prairie concept of a family, while another has a Fast and Furious model, while another is more like The Godfather, and another is more like Mommy Dearest. This is not to mention Star Wars or The Lion King or My Big Fat Greek Wedding or Yellowstone or Old Yeller or any rom-com either person ever saw. When we look at marriage, let's look through the different components that might be. Now, if you look at this list could be expanded. There could be so many more things on this list. Since I compiled this list, I thought of so many more things that could be added to it, and that's kind of the point. There's really no limit to this list, and all these things are kind of embedded in that person's egoic identity in their mind, and we don't even know they're there. So when you say the word marriage, that person may have some concept of monopolistic sexual exclusivity, societal recognition, ownership, territory, jealousy, desire, affection, complementary roles, expectations, directional adoration, transactions, commitment, pair bonding, recognized identity, provocation to improve, tendency to decline, attraction, negotiation, romance, obsession, needs, wants, child rearing, vacations, income ratio, chore ratio, love, like, annoyance, toleration, conflict resolution, acceptable interactions, daily greetings, family meals, dinnerware, couple friends, guest frequency, contraceptions, chivalry, particularities, rent or own, interior decorating, vehicles, sexual intimacy, and under sexual intimacy, you could click a drop-down arrow on that. You could click a drop-down arrow on any of these, and it keeps going. Sexual intimacy, frequency, quality, enthusiasm, initiation, the menu, what all is that can be done there, devices, participation, and then continuing on with the list, loyalty, education, self-improvement, hobbies, temperance, communication styles, emotionality, extended family, respect, and we could go on and on and on and on and on. When you say the word marriage, all kinds of things like this are sitting in the other person's head, and we don't even know they're there. But you will find out, and you'll find out probably the hard way. Not only are the person's expectations tied up in all these things, but they don't even realize it. And worst of all, their concept of identity is wrapped up in these ideas that they couldn't even explain to you, even if you directly asked them. The way these things are usually discovered is the hard way. It's when the partner says or does something that unwittingly and inadvertently tramples on one of these expectations. Now the other partner is upset, and they themselves do not even know why. Now you've likely got an argument on your hands, and in all likelihood, none of the stated topics of the argument will be anywhere close to what's really wrong. This concept of emotional identity attachment is the most important thing that I want to emphasize with regard to the axis of awareness, yet it is the most difficult to articulate to those who aren't already on a journey of separating from these attachments. And because of the time disparity for this video, I will probably include that portion in a follow-on video to explain the relationship between egoic identity attachments as things are moved over from the implicit to the explicit. If you compile all the things to which a person is emotionally attached and bring them all together, this is what we're going to refer to as the ego. It's how the person subconsciously perceives themselves and of their place in the world, and it informs how they subconsciously understand how others see them. Notice informs, inform. It's the conceptual form of the person. It's what shapes them. This word subconscious is very, very important. It means that you are not aware of these attachments or perceptions, yet you have them nonetheless. It's the cognitive equivalent of an involuntary bodily function. We don't try to make our heart beat or our fingernails grow or our food digest or even breathe most of the time. These things all happen when we are asleep. In the same way, most of your own identity conceptualization is dark to you, but there nonetheless, and it doesn't become salient to us until something challenges it. Your body doesn't know the difference between an imminent physical threat like a snake or a tiger versus an identity threat that comes from a challenging argument. Someone tramples on one of your hidden sacred cows and we lose our cool, feel uneasy, maybe even go ballistic. It's a lifelong process to discover what these attachments are so that we can work on emotionally detaching from them. And if you're not with a partner who is committed to this identity journey of finding and removing the dross off the authentic self, then go get yourself a bomb vest and a ballistic helmet, because you are in for one blast after another when you try to engage with them. So back to this word marriage. When we click on the drop-down arrow and see what kind of sub-ideas might be lurking underneath this one single word, these are all the minesweeper bombs that are going to get you when you navigate blindly around the implicit, which is almost everything to some degree. Not only this, but each one of these things could also have their own drop-down arrow and then another layer and so on. These are all just sitting there waiting to blow up in your face. And that feeling of limerence just casts a blur over all these things to where we don't even want to pay attention to them. And we feel good for not doing so. It feels wonderful and magical and romantic. But it's going to get you. Before we end this video, I need to specify something very important that we did not cover in this video. Over the years, your partner will grow and develop and transform. As this happens, they will develop new interests. They may want to try new and different things. Some of those might seriously challenge things that were negotiated or presumed previously. They might even question or change some or all of their belief system. I get messages from clients facing those issues all the time, and I've been through many of them myself. We will dedicate an entire video to that concept of the changes that come with growth in your partner. But in the meantime, it's important to continue exploring the implicit, the presumed and unknown things in your relationship as a regular part of how you relate on a consistent basis. So what can you do to help move things from the implicit to the explicit? You can start by using the list on this video as a starting point for questions and conversations. You can also purchase conversation starting card decks, which can be hours and hours of fun. My wife and I watch relationship reality TV shows like Love is Blind and Married at First Sight for the purpose of pausing the show and discussing what the couple should have done in various situations that went sideways. And you might want to try that. That way you can have these discussions about couple interactions without it being personally threatened to either one of you. There are countless other things you can do, and your creativity should be employed to this purpose. Specifically, the mutual movement of each partner's repository of the unknown and implicit into the known and explicit is part of reciprocal opening. We have other videos on that topic, reciprocal opening, but that is what occurs when two people fall in love with each other. And they're not falling in love with the romantic projection of that person, but the actual person. That's the kind of reciprocal opening that you want to happen. And that is when you have an actual relationship and not a projected or a pretend relationship. If you're interested in discussing these matters further for the sake of your own situation in which you find yourself, we offer paid one-on-one consultations at beyondthefundamentals.com. Just go to the homepage and then scroll down to book a one-on-one consultation, and there you can send an email, a message through the system, and then we can arrange a one-on-one consultation for you to discuss your situation. In videos like this, it's impossible to address every situation in which people might find themselves, but during the one-on-one sessions, we can take all the things that we've covered on this channel over the years, all these charts, all these growth diagrams, all the stuff we've done in relationship videos, and we can apply them to your situation to help both of you navigate what might be done, one of you or both of you navigate what might be done to improve things that you may want to improve. Also, we could not do this without your help. I want to invite you to support Beyond the Fundamentals. You can go to beyondthefundamentals.com and then click on the donate page, and that will take you to a page where you can donate in one of 5 electronic ways. Thanks to everybody who already does this. It takes a lot of time, space, energy, money, and resources to produce this content, and I really hope it's helpful. I get a lot of positive feedback of people who are very helped by this kind of content. So if you'd like to see it continue, please support what we're doing here at our donation page. And remember to book a one-on-one consultation. Also, you can go to the home page and scroll down to book a one-on-one consultation there. Thanks for watching. May the Lord bless you. Have a good day.